Hi guys, my name is Dr. Shambhardi and welcome here. Today we're going to learn C Sharp in 10 days, 10 to 15 days. Let's see how long it takes. But the idea is that we will learn every day some portions of C Sharp and we'll use W3Schools website as a reference website. It's a great website. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not officially being sponsored or this is not an official W3Schools website. It's just a free resource that is amazing and it has information in a very cool manner. So I will be using this as a reference website and I will be going through all of these topics in these next 10 to 15 days and we'll cover all basics of C Sharp. So do stick around. Let's begin C Sharp. Again, if you want to learn programming, if you are into C Sharp and want to learn programming with Java and other courses as well, so don't forget to subscribe. Let's begin. Now, why learn C Sharp? Well, C Sharp is basically a programming language that is developed by Microsoft and runs on .NET framework. C Sharp is used to develop web apps, desktop apps, mobile apps, games, and much many more. Yes, you heard it right. C Sharp is used for all of these purposes. You can use C Sharp for web apps, desktops, mobile apps, as well as games. So if you have heard of Unity, Unity uses C Sharp at the back end to do that. Okay, so this is one major reason. If you go inside the next chapter, you will find that C Sharp is actually pronounced as C Sharp, even though we use this hash sign, but we don't use C hash. In fact, it's primarily pronounced as C Sharp for whatever reason. It's an object-oriented programming language. What exactly we mean by object-oriented, we're going to discuss more in the classes and OOP concepts. But basically, everything resides in with respect to an object and a class, similar to Java. Okay. So if you have learned Java, excellent. If you haven't, I have a video of Java already posted on this channel. So do check it out. I will leave link in the description or somewhere on the icon, you can find that. So object-oriented basically means that in this language, everything is considered as object, and we create a class in which we save the data and methods and attributes, and then the object basically is able to represent that method. Okay, just like a car model is just one major core model in the company, then all the cars that are created based on that model have the same thing. So if you take Tesla truck, it has one same coherent design on all of its models. Okay, so all the lineup that comes, so if I build 1000, all 1000 will have exactly same shape, same tires, same GUI, same seats, same blah, blah. But the actual data of how the design is going to be is considered as a class, and then we create these individual objects that run with it. Okay, so it is created by Microsoft and it runs on basically .NET framework. C Sharp has its roots primarily from C, which I don't agree. Okay, for me, I believe its roots come from something called Java. So, and the languages other popularly close to is like C++, but it's more again to Java. In fact, at one point when it came, it was considered as a Java alternative, and many people still argue it's just a Java's copy. And you would find that if you have learned Java, learning C Sharp is quite a breeze, because almost 80-85% basic concepts are exactly same as in Java. Okay. Anyway, the first version did came in 2002, way after Java, and the current latest version is C Sharp 12, which was released in November 2023, sorry, according to W3Schools. Now, C Sharp is used for mobile apps, desktops, web apps, and all these other things, VRs, games, database applications, and much more. So learning this makes you a one more at a one more level of understanding how application is developed, especially for your Windows. So Windows again primarily uses .NET and C Sharp to work with their applications. So if you are into Windows programming, you gotta learn C Sharp. So that's why it becomes absolutely important as a programmer, as a developer, to understand how this language is working. And this is what whole this course is going to be about. So why we use CSS? Again, as I said, it's one of the most important popular languages in the world because it uses and is being used in all of these different technologies. It's easy to learn and simple to use. Again, depends on that, but yeah, it's relatively easy if you know already C, C++, or in Java. If you know any of these languages, it's a quite breeze. But I'm assuming that you're going to learn this for the first time. So hopefully throughout this course, I will take you in a very easy and much easier to learn approach. Okay. And again, I'm using W3Schools website just for the reference sake, so that you already have materials and notes, and you can easily come to this free website and reuse it. I just love this website. And just a quick disclaimer before we again go further, I'm not being paid or sponsored officially by W3Schools up till this point. Okay, in near future, never know. But now this is just me loving W3Schools website and using this as a reference material so I can share with you. It has a huge community. So C Sharp has a huge community that you can easily contact. But again, this community is quite active and quite useful, and we will be using these communities in later on other tutorial sessions, and we'll see how we can explore them. C Sharp is an object-oriented language. We already talked about that. C Sharp is close to C++ Java. As I said, you would find much it's easier if closer to Java if you follow that long. It makes easy for programmers to switch from C Sharp or vice versa. So if you know Java or C++, it becomes much easier to learn C Sharp. Or if you have learned C Sharp and in the future you want to switch to Java, again, it will become much easy for you to do that once you have covered this course as well. Okay, so let's get started with C Sharp. Now, if you come to this link, C Sharp basically uses VS Studio. Okay, so we will be using VS Studio installer. You can download it from the internet. Again, you can find the link or go onto Google, just search for VS Studio installer and the link is available. You can download it. Once install it, it's very easy to create projects with it. So you just need to click on the create new project around here. Once you create a new project, it will ask you that what is supposed to be your project details. So for example, if it requires you to install more tools and features, click on that so you can install more features if it's not already available. Once it does that, you need to choose something called a console app.net. For us at beginner level, we will be using that. So do make sure that you select this one once you click on the next and you want to install this feature here. Then create a new project and configure your project. So for example, provide your project name, provide the location where you want to save your folders, and other details such as create new solutions and so on and so forth. Once you do that, you just run the Visual Studio Code and you can easily do that as well. I have a tutorial soon uploading that will show you how you can do this in your VS Code as well. So if you are using VS Code primarily, you can do that. You simply need to install an extension called C Sharp Dev Kit, and then it should basically do most of the task for you. Okay, and then once this is done, it should be quite easy to follow along. Okay, coming back to the main syntax of it. Okay, so I hope you follow this. If you still need more help, let me know in the comments and I will explain exactly how to do that. I already have a tutorial on how to install C Sharp in VS Code. Just follow along and you can do it in VS Code as well. Just need one or two extensions. That's it. It's as easy peasy. So let's begin with the basic syntax and try to understand how this basic syntax is working and what basically we need to do. So the typical syntax of C Sharp or every single code basically will have this default feature for us. This default feature allows us to understand how things are working. So let me just zoom in. Okay, so first thing is we use using system. Okay, and then we use namespace hello world, block start, block close, class, program. This is where our object oriented concepts kicks in. So class basically represents your entire entity and data. Within this, we create our own methods and data, and then we use them. Okay, namespace is just like grouping multiple classes under the same project folder. If you follow that along, then class program, basically program becomes the class name. Okay, so this is my class name, and again you can name it any class name as you want. Typically we give the name which defines the purpose of the class. Then we have static void main. Again, if you're coming from Java, you would find this syntax exactly same. We have a class name, block start, block close, and then Java uses the word public. In this case, the public is by default there, and then static void main, again exactly same. The only difference is here the main M is capital as compared to Java. And then the strings argument array is passed here as an argument. In Java, strings has a capital S, C Sharp uses a small s. Okay, so block start, block close for this main method, and then we use console.write-ln. Java uses system.out.println. Again, if you have not done Java, I won't talk much about as a comparison right now, but later on I will try to do some comparison to see how similar or different these two things are. Okay. Anyway, so this is basically typical code. Now let's just debug this code and try to understand what is happening here. So using system means that we can use classes system namespace. Okay. So this will allow us to use the system namespace in our system. A blank line is given. For example, the next blank line is completely ignored by C Sharp. It doesn't count these blank lines. C Sharp will look for the semicolons to know that when the statement is ending or the block code starts and block code end, indicating when the system is basically where the code is starting and where the code is ending in the system. The namespace is used to organize the code, and it is a container for classes or other namespaces. Okay, so it's used to organize your code, and it's a container which basically behaves like a folder or a package name, letting us know that hey, this program belongs to this project or this folder. Okay, and so there can be many other classes that come inside this particular folder or a package. Okay, so that we basically have a group or a container kind of a concepts. The curly brackets marks the beginning and end of the code, meaning that the curly brackets indicate that my code now starts for this particular project starts from there and ends here. Then we have a class program, so the code for class ends starts from here and ends here. Then we have a method. Okay, we're going to talk more about methods later on, but method is basically a block of code that performs a specific task. You can create your own methods. Custom methods are created to do more advanced functions, or custom functions, or our serve a particular purpose. We generally define it as a code or a block of code that performs a specific task. So this block indicates that, hey, the block means that this is a section of code that belongs to this entire one single block. Okay. The class is a container for data and methods which brings functionality to your program. Every line of code that runs in C# must be inside the class. Okay, so this is an important point. Every line of code that runs, that needs to be executed, must be inside the class. So we basically need to write everything inside this class. So project folder is just like a namespace, is like a project folder, it's there, but actual code goes inside the class. So everything we write needs to be inside this class method. Class is basically a container for data and methods. This is a method here. Main is a method here, and then data will basically mean creating variables and defining those variables and then using this inside our methods. Okay, so don't worry if you don't understand the using system, namespace, and class works. Just think of it as something that almost appears in every single program. So you will be using this structure in almost every single structure, using system, namespace, and class. Okay, the class name would differ in every single code. We try to give a unique class name for our all class names. Another block is given for the main method. Any code inside this curly brackets will be executed. Don't have to understand the keywords before and after the main. You will get to know them bit by bit throughout this tutorial. Okay. So in general case, console is a class of a system namespace which has a write-ln method. So in this case, when we use a console, this is basically a class name. This exists inside the system. It's like a default library. Okay. We call this as a library, meaning that it holds some built-in functions and we don't need to create them. One of the functions using inside this library is called console. So console is again a class, just like this program class. However, this console class has some specific built-in functions. It has already been created by the good people at Microsoft for us to use. And the write-ln is a method that is used to print this text on our console. So we say console, go on a console and write a line called hello world on our console output. So we see this hello world output here. Console again is a class name that has already been defined and is actually part of this system package. Capish? Excellent. Then we come inside the next part, which is basically this write-ln method is used to print the outputs. So if you omit the system using system line, you would have to write system.console.write-ln. So do keep a note on that, that if you don't want to use this first line using system, you need to then provide the system keyword in front of the console, letting it know that, hey, there's a system package. Inside the system package, there's a console class. Inside the console class, there's a write-ln method. Okay, and I'm going to use that. But again, writing, because we will be using console write and console write and so many times in our code, so every time writing this extra word just makes no sense, just adds that bit of extra line. To simplify it, we just use it as a first line and ensuring that this package is automatically inherited and then becomes the part of our code. Okay, then every C# statement needs to end with a semicolon. This is a same rule as C, C++, and Java. Every statement that we write must be ending with a semicolon, with a semicolon. There's no semicolon here because if there's no semicolon, there's a block of code. Since there's a block of code, meaning curly brackets is there, then there's no need for semicolon. Class again does not need a semicolon because it starts with a block and ends with a block, and then the block does not need a semicolon. The method again doesn't have a semicolon because it again has a block. So if you're using block, then there is no need of semicolon because block serves a larger purpose, means that it will hold multiple lines of code inside it. So actually it means that, hey, I have started a class, but this class contains multiple things inside it. So you actually go and look inside for that single line of code, single line of statement, and that single line of statement has to end with a semicolon. Okay. In C# is a case sensitive language, so my class and my class have different meaning. Do keep in mind. So in this case, write is capital, L is capital. Okay. So write L are two capital words. So you keep in mind on that. If you make them small, this will not run. This will be a completely different thing. Main M is capital. So if you use a small main, it will create a complaint. A string is a small s. If you use it as a capital, it will create a problem. Okay. So do keep a keen eye on the small letters and capital letters, because C Sharp is that. Unlike Java, the name of C Sharp file does not have to match the class name. Okay, so if you have done Java and if you're coming from Java, you know that Java's class name has to be same as your file name. However, in C Sharp, the file does not have to match. Okay, so you can name it differently, but they often do. But often people would use actually the same file name. While saving the file, save it using a proper name and add .cs extension to it. For Java, we use .java. For C Sharp, we use CS as an extension to the end of the file name. Okay, so this would basically create our simple syntax. Now, let's talk more about the output. Let's talk more about how we generate C Sharp output. Okay, so in order to generate C Sharp output, you can use something called writeln method. How do we do that? So here's an example of it. So we write console.writeln to generate output on the console. Now, if you're coming from Java, this is similar to system.out.println. If you're coming from C++, we write C out. If you're coming from C language or Python, we use print functions or printf relevantly. Okay, but in C Sharp, we use something called console.writeln and then bracket start, bracket close, curly brackets. Curly brackets is typical indication that this is a method. Okay, we're going to talk more about methods later on in this chapter. So for now, basically consider this is a method, which is basically a block of code that performs a specific task. Okay, every method in generally every programming language is considered as a block of code or a set of instructions that perform a specific task. In this case, specifically, writeln is a method that performs output or generates an output on the console. And then we are using something called console class. Now, console is a name of class. We talked about a little bit about the classes previously. So this console class contains a method called writeln, and this together will write the output on our console. If you tried yourself, if you click on this one, here's the typical program, and here's the output that we get. Now, using system dot semicolon, again, we have talked about this. Namespace my application, again, creating a namespace like a package, that this entire program belongs to this package. So if you have multiple classes, they can belong to one same package or same folder. Then we write class, program, P capital. Again, it's up to us. This is a class name. Usually any class name would suffice, but depends on what exactly you want to do. The purpose of your class usually is the name of the class. That's what a recommended thing to do. Then we wrote static, void, and main. This is the main function. So your code will have 1,000 lines, but the main function is the first thing your compiler will execute. So when we run the program, the first thing that the compiler executes is this main function. From here, the execution point starts. Okay, and generally take it this way. Okay, so obviously there are other things as well, but in a general sense, in a basic voice, we say that when you execute a code, the first thing that gets executed, or the first point of execution, is the main method. Okay. Then we have string arguments. Again, that when this code executes, it might take some arguments at runtime before the actual code gets executions. In this case, we are not providing any argument right now, so it's just completely ignored. Do keep in mind that here M is capital, the P is capital. Okay. Similarly, C here is also capital. C sharp is case sensitive. So write L and L both are W and L in both writeln are capital letters. So console.writeln and method is executed. So this will print hello out. And you can write multiple times as well. So you can write, for example, console.write line. Okay, again, because I'm writing in multiple times, I usually give again W capital, L capital, and then I usually give these round brackets first, ensuring that this syntax is followed, then inverted quotation double times, and then I can say, for example, please subscribe my channel. Okay, yeah, let's do some subscription, and then if you run it, basically it should execute these two lines. Now, please subscribe my channel. We get these two lines available. Now you can write console.writeln as many times as you want whenever you need an output. Similarly, you can say that you can add as many writeln methods as you want, as just mentioned. So you can have writeln presided by the console. Now, what exactly do we mean by console.writeln? Console, as I said, is the name of a class. Just like program, this is our class name that we have created. Similarly, the good people at the C Sharp backend, they created a class called console that contains all the methods and relevant code to print the output on a DOS command, or console as we generally call it. So when we use writeln, it basically means that this is a method that exists inside this class. Now, because we are using writeln method directly without yet creating an object of this class, so we need to provide or prefix this as a class name is provided. Dot is basically a connection operator that connects this class with this method. So it's like a class is contains a lot of methods. So this public static void again is a method. This static void main is a method that belongs to a program class. Okay, so then we can create our own methods as well. As I said, we'll talk about this in methods chapter. But making it static allows us to create, or sorry, execute the code directly without actually creating an object of a class. So in fact, this method has also been declared as static. Okay, we talk more about this later on. So these are just initial concepts that you need to understand, that okay, console is a class that exists by default in C Sharp library. We don't need to import it. It's by default imported. It's already included with this thing. So this is like a library file. It's already, when you execute, this library file is already imported in your system. Okay, so it's already there. So we are calling its method, but because we are not creating an object yet, we are not officially initiating this class. So we are using directly the class name dot writeln. Okay, understand? Hopefully. So you can also output numbers and perform mathematical calculations within the writeln method. So you can use console.writeln 3 plus 3. This would also work fine. So if I come back here and if I write another statement called console.writeln, oops, W-R-I-T-E, write, L capital I-N-E, okay, and semicolon. What happens if I will go further? So if I write a small line, and then if I can say hello, let's say 3 plus 3, what happens now? I have deliberately written a small l. So if I run this code, okay, so let's try to see what happens if we give a small l, or if we deliberately do a mistake in our code. Will our system generate an error? And if it does, what is the error? How does it look? Or will it ignore it and understand that, okay, you're trying to do something, and it will execute the code appropriately? Okay, so now you can see that it generated an error. It says that error CS0117, just a specific code about this error. Okay, and it says system console does not contain a definition for writeln. So they're saying that, hey, you are using system.console, and that console class does not contain a definition for writeLine method. So it says that I am not able to find this method writeln. Okay, so location of symbol related and all these details are there, blah 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 things, but this is most commonly the one we are looking for. So whenever we try to debug an error, we try to read the error and we try to understand. So this basically means that it's not able to find this writeln method. It says that I don't know where it is, and the console that you're trying to use, the class name, actually doesn't contain the writeln method. But for us, its writeLine is there, but because we have used a small l, it's creating a problem. Similarly, semicolon. Remember, we talked about this. If you miss out a semicolon and you run the code, again we get an error, and it will now tell you semicolon expected. So you see, depends on what mistake you make, the errors will change. Okay, and you need to be able to understand what mistakes you are making, and you need to be able to understand the error messages so that you can easily debug the code. So in this case, it's telling us very clear and cut, listen, the semicolon is missing. Okay, so in this case we come here and we say, okay, if I use the semicolon now, I run this code, and if I've made this capital already, hopefully everything should work fine. So we see hello world, please subscribe, and then we get 6 channel. Okay, so 6 is 3 plus 3. So you can directly do mathematical additions or print a number and print a value within your code as well. Okay, I hope that explains. So if I come back here, then there is also a write method which is similar to writeln. So just like writeln, there is a write method as well. The only difference is that it does not insert a new line at the end of an output. What do we mean by that? If I come back to my code here, so notice every time I write console or console.write a line, it adds a new line as well. Okay, so the word line actually means add a new line as well, on a new line, write this string on a new line. But if you write just something called console dot write, and brackets, semicolon. Then I go back, give inverted quotation marks, and I say without line. Okay, and if in fact answer is without line. So now I've ans, I am missing keywords. So I've given deliberately space at the first. Okay, and then I run this code. So why this space was there, I will just show you in a moment. So 6, and then there's a space here. Okay, so deliberately there's a space, so you can give spaces if you want, and then you see answer is without a line. But now we say, hey, it is on a new line. That's because we wrote these 3 with a line, so it automatically added a new line after this. But this console is on the console right is on string. So now what happens if I write another string? Console dot write bracket start bracket close semicolon inverted quotation start inverted quotation close, uh, BECAU, because of WRIT, write method. Okay, and then now if I run this code, so now we have used 2 write methods, and now you can see that the because of write method is appearing on the same line. So that's the key difference that I wanted to show. First, whenever we write ln, it automatically takes the output on the new line and adds the new line as well. Okay, so in fact it can be considered that after printing the string, it adds the new line, so that the next line automatically, or the next write method automatically goes to the new line. However, if you just write after this write line, you will find that it's going on a new line itself. Okay, but if you just write the second write without the line, now it continues. So here's the thing to understand is, you write line, it prints a string and adds a new line after the string. That's why the next string is automatically printed on the new line. So it prints the string and then adds a new line after it. Okay, and then it prints the string, adds a new line after it. So that's why this method actually appears on the new line. So we assume that wherever we write a write method, it should concatenate with the first line. But because the write line method actually adds the line after the string has been written, so the next write method appears on the new line. However, this write now does not contain the word line, therefore there is no new line added here. Hence, the next write method that precedes this will automatically be on the same line. Okay, so now if I write any other string here, all those strings will be using the write method will be on the same line. Okay, so do keep this thing in mind. So this is what basically it's trying to do. So note that we add an extra space when needed after the hello world. So in this case, they added the space after the hello world so that it appears on next line. Let's just check this output out. So it says hello world, again space, I will be printed on the same line. So hello world space is here, and then it's I, because I starts immediately after the inverted quotation. So whatever you use within the inverted quotations will be printed as it is. So in my case, I previously added another space before it. Okay, so if I run this code now you will notice there are 2 spaces here. Okay, so there are 2 spaces here, one here and one here. So these 2 spaces are here because hello world is there, and here hello the spaces here. So if you are using string, do be mindful of it, that the string will include the spaces, whatever the characters are within the inverted quotation marks. Okay, so in this tutorial we use the write ln method as it makes more easier. So throughout the remaining chapters, mostly we will be following the write line method. It will make things more easier to understand that every output is there, but sometimes we need output without the new line, so that's why the write method is always there. So do mind that if you need 2 strings to appear on the same line, but you want to write them separately in a different separate consoles, maybe because of the loops or inputs or whatever case, and you don't need to break it into new lines, there's a write method there always. Okay, and wonderful. Let's move on to comments. Now, comments again are an extremely useful thing within C++ or C, Java, Python, and C Sharp as well, along with every other programming language. So no matter which language you come from, I C, C++, Java, XYZ, every language uses something called comments. Every language has its own unique structure, but most commonly they all follow the double backslash. Okay. Now, what exactly we mean by comments? First, let me explain that. Comments basically are notes to yourself that you don't want the compiler or executioner to execute and compile. These are like notes as a programmer, documentation help, information help, something you don't want to execute. You just comment it out. You basically make them invisible, but you want to make them there in the code, invisible to the compiler and the uh, what we call console output. Okay, so the code will not be compiled by compiler, nor it will be executed, but it will be there as within the code. So it's used as comments, or it's known as comments. So to prevent something in order to execute, or to prevent something that we don't want this to execute, we use these double backslash. So any text between double backslash and the end of the line is ignored by C sharp and will not be executed. This example uses a single line comment before a line of code. So in this case, we wrote the right console.write line, but we use this single line comment. What this now means that if you execute this code, you will now notice that there is something here. This is a comment. This comment is now completely ignored by the browser or by the console, and it's not executed here because it's a comment. This is just an instruction for the programmer, for the developer, for the team of people who are working on certain projects. We use comments to make sure to make our code more readable and executable. Okay, and we can write comment literally anywhere because they are completely ignored by the compiler. So I can write a comment here. Okay, so comment one, this is again fine. I can write a comment here. For example, I can say this is my class name used for test purpose, and then I can use, but I can change the class name. Okay, so what is this? This is instruction. I wrote something that I want to remember that this is my class name, but I can change the class name, for example, later. So these are what we call comments. These lines will be completely ignored by the compiler and everything. So these comments allows us to keep like a short notes, instructions within our code, which are very useful, very helpful in understanding what we want to do. Okay, so this is what we usually, and these typically are known as single line comments, to keep in mind. This example uses a single line comment at the end of the line of code. So you can write the comment, as I said, anywhere, since they are ignored, as long as you just follow the basic, that make sure you don't write between these things. Okay, between a code, you don't disrupt the code structure. You can write the comments anywhere. So even at the end of the line, you can write the comment, because the compiler, anything that precedes double backslash will be completely ignored. So it doesn't really matter where you write it. There are something called a multi-line comment as well. Multi-line means when you do need to write multiple lines of comments. So in my case, I wrote something in these lines, but I can write into multi-line comments. So to do that, I use backslash static and static backslash. Okay, this is same as in Java as well, actually. So if you use backslash static and static backslash, backslash static would mean that I'm using a comment that goes for multi-line. Okay, so this is my test hello world class. Okay, for the C sharp course, on my CH channel, learn with W3 Schools. I am Dr. Zishan. Please SUBSCRIB subscribe. Okay, capish. Wonderful. So all these lines are now completely ignored by the compiler. They are known as comments. If you need to write multiple comments, we use backslash static, and then we end it with static backslash. Okay. If you need to write single line, you can write single line. You can use this as well. So you, if you want, you can use all of these in a single line, but then that means you, every line you have to use these double backslash, double backslash. Some people don't prefer it, but since I use main comment from start to here, even though if I use double backslash inside a comment, this will be completely ignored, because as per compiler, comment started here, comment ended here. Anything you write inside it is just completely ignored. So I can write whatever I want. Okay, so any characters, anything I can write will completely be ignored. That's why we use comments for notes purposes, for information purposes, for asking people to please subscribe as well. Okay, they are a wonderful way of doing that. Okay, let's go forward. So it says single or multi-line comments which you use. So it's actually up to you which you want to use. You can use the single line comment or multi-line comment. Some people just use double these quotations even for a one line of code, no problem. Or you can use that. It's completely up to your choice. But make it a habit of commenting your code. Why you need variables? Why you need data types? Which data type is doing what thing? Methods, functions, if else. Wherever we go in our programming, we try to leave these short notes to ourselves so that we remember the purpose and how the code is working. Okay, moreover, also, before, I don't think so this guy talks about it, but you can use comment to comment out certain lines of code. So in this case, if I come here, and I have this line, but I don't want to use this line. So I can comment out a certain line of code. Now this means this line is commented out, meaning compiler will completely ignore this line and this line will now not be printed. So if I run the code, I only get hello world. Why I got only hello world? Because I commented out this piece of code. You can completely do that. Okay, so if I come back here, I wrote multiple lines, and if I say I don't like any of this code, so I can come back here and I can say let's just use backslash steric and come back here and steric backslash. Now meaning that all this line of codes are commented out, and I'm just going to print this through the lines. We totally do that. That's one another purpose of comment. We comment out certain lines of code that is not working for debugging purpose, for checking purpose, for evaluation, for ensuring everything is okay. If something is not working, we just delete it. Or if you don't want to delete some good lines of code that you have done, but it's not serving the right purpose, but you want to keep the code, we just comment it out. Okay, so you can comment out the code as well. So as I said, anything you write inside these comments will be completely ignored by the browser, which includes the source code itself. So even though we have a code, if you comment it out, it's completely ignored. Class. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Let's move to something called variables. Now let's start a little bit deep diving into C Sharp's actual code. So this is the end of the day one. Now to in day two, we'll begin with variables. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow. And if you have liked this video up to so far, please like this video, do a comment, and don't forget to subscribe.